So here is the backyard Marionberries. Now I used to have an acreage, but a long time ago, well not a long time ago, a short time ago, I had to move. But I definitely wanted to have Marionberries. So as you can see, I have a little plot here in my backyard, and I'm going to take you through the year and show you what I've done over the past 4 years and show you how you too can have Marionberries in your backyard. Now, I had acreage and I did grow them for a decade, so I have a little bit of experience with these, and I've found some things that work. And pretty much it's a pretty easy plant to work with. You must be prepared to deal with thorns. Marionberries have thorns. So if you don't like thorns, well, you might not like Marionberries. But if you can put up with thorns, the berries are definitely worth waiting for. As you can see, this plant here is well established. It has several canes coming out of the ground this year, and on those canes, as you can see, there is fruiting shoots galore starting, and every one of those little darlings is going to produce fruit. The other thing you may notice here in the backyard is I do have a little bit of a obstruction in the background. I'm stuck in between here, a big apartment building, and my house. The bonus is the sun comes in this way in the morning, and we're mid-afternoon here, and if I want to blur out the camera, I can shine it in the sun a little more, but it's a gray day. And this time of day is when there's usually lots of afternoon sun. So the effort that I've had to do, and you might not have to do this in your backyard, is bring the canes up high. That way they get as much sun as possible. So that's just one little thing you can do in your backyard. I have deer fencing, as you can see. And the other thing that makes, I think, dealing with these things easy is 18-inch long by maybe 24 tops, 2 feet. It's just electrical wire, 14 gauge. I have access to it. A lot of people do. Cut the sheathing off, salvage the black and the white wires, and they make great ties for tying them up. And as you can see, I've got a wire up top to create a trellis here, extended out off the fence posts that are up nice and high. As you can see, this is a bit of a reach even to get to that for me on my flat feet. So yeah, there's just a quick introduction. Now I'm going to take you just around the corner here and show you how this trails out. Marionberry canes can grow. This one here has got 20 plus times 6, I believe, shoots on it. And this is where we make babies. Now I'll get into this further, but as you can see here in this setup, what I've done is already cut off the shoots that have rooted. And how do you make these root? I'll show you that, but a little bit later. That's going to be at the end of the season. But as you can see, here's one that is well rooted. It's still connected to the mother plant. And when I get somebody else to hold the camera, I'll show you how you separate it from the mother plant. I've done 4, and I have 8 more to do. So I was able to make a dozen more plants from this one cane. I shouldn't say one cane, but one well established. Coming back in, I'll show you down here. See those lovely little purple pointy things? That's next year's crop, just coming out of the ground. Now this is Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and as you can see, they do quite well here. This was one root ball I salvaged from my property that I had, and had to say goodbye to a lot of other ones, but as you can see, I haven't lost out on Marionberry crop, and these are ones that I've managed to get going last year, and so there's going to be a modest amount of fruit come this year. And of course, the other thing that you must realize if you're going to plant Marionberries, you gotta wait a little while before you get good production. So this is what you can get 3 and 4 years down the road. This is what you can get 2 years. And this is typically what you get the first year. Just a little teaser. But be patient, and you can get this. The little cages are also, if you have a four-legged critter in the backyard, you might want to do what I've done here. Now you'll notice the grass and then the holes that basically the Marionberry canes are being happy in. I'm not doing a video on how to plant bricks, but this is where I'm going to put 2 more, and I think I might even dig up a 3rd one in the middle there. 3 babies, and then there's some friends of mine that are going to be happy that I've got 9 plants to share this year. And of course this is just the deer fencing, just little sections of it chopped off, and that also helps keep the doggy from digging in here. Discourages them a little bit. And I find the grass helps retain water too, so it's got a lot of pluses. With the cages there, I can whip snip when needed, and so there. That's just a little tip on how to protect the bottom of your Marionberry plants in your backyard. So here we are a month later. As you can see, there's a fair bit more growth on these canes. So the early part of this video was early March, and this is late March, 28th. So as you can see the difference in 1 month, it really come up quite nice. And then down at the base, look at all those purple canes for next year. 10 shoots coming out of this root ball. The other thing I wanted to show you is I'm about to plant one of the babies. Now look how this plant can root. So I coaxed this into this pot last fall, and as you can see, the roots run right around. It's got a nice little shoot coming out the top of it. I'm going to put it in this hole, and then I'll show you what it'll be like when I'm finished in a second here. So here it is in the ground, and you can see I've got it run over to a jar in the ground. Of course there's water in the jar, and so the end I cut on a taper. Just poke a hole in the top of the tin foil. Just shape some tin foil around the jar. The threads hold it on, as you can see. Dig a little companion hole for it, and that helps keep the shock down when you transplant. So it's still getting some water through the cane here. So what I've found in the past, if you just leave this thing dangle and the nice little plant here that started gets shocked. It says, where's that water source that I used to be hooked up to? So this is just a little trick to get a baby going. And later this summer we'll disconnect the umbilical cord. Bye for now. And over here I still have a collection that I have to disconnect from the master canes up there. So this is one I did earlier in the month that I showed you. And there you see we have a shoot already, so we have success again. It's a very easy plant to have success with. As you saw in that last shot in the bucket, I mean, you see these roots on the top, and they're all through this in just a matter of months over the winter. As it coaxed down on the ground here in the fall, you can see my little setup here. The tufts of grass I find help get them started. It's just something else for them to grab onto, and of course in the winter you get lots of rain, and lots of rain you don't want these to be just saturated in mud. So a little tuft of grass in them makes a difference. So here's everybody separated from the mother plant. As you can see, all the little canes that I've cut off, they're all about 2 feet long, roughly, with a wedge cut on them. Just, it's better when the tip is in the water, have a bit more surface that way. And the other thing you can see here is the little arrangement I had to steady the end of the canes through the winter to let them root in these little pots. So this, as you can see, is just some wire, and it's adjustable. And so when I had in the other video there, the canes running through that wire, now we got them up here ready to produce fruit. So here we are 2 months later. It's mid-May, and as you can see, all those little shoots from those primary canes that came up last year have now thrown off their fruit-bearing shoots. As you can see, we still have some blossoms that haven't fallen off, but for the most part, the blossom part of this production season is just about over. And I thought I'd show you the progress that the babies are making. So here's those 3 little plants just starting off, and it's throwing off, as you can see, a couple of very immature canes at the moment. This is, 2 months of growth, so they're just getting started. I'm still maintaining the piece of the cane that I cut off into a jar of water, and this one is over here is just sharing the two. And the difference this makes, as you can see, is you maintain a little bit of growth on the cane you cut off. So that tells you that you're getting a good water source through there. Now you can probably disconnect these now, but I kind of just leave them until they wilt. It's just a little insurance policy, I guess. In other words, it kind of back feeds water into the plant. It just helps it get through that first year. You won't have anything like this, of course, in year 2. But these little guys, in 4 years, can start throwing off canes like this. Now you can see this year there's a couple of fresh canes right here. And here is the tip. And these tips are very delicate. Now, of course, I showed you earlier in the video series here the deer fencing I have in behind. And I just want to walk around right here. You can see this is the top of a new shoot. It wants to go into the neighbor's yard. Well, I'm going to stop that right now. And if you have any kind of fencing like this and you want to weave the Marionberry canes through the fence, this is very delicate. You can break this with ease. So be very careful. Thus why I try and keep it away from the fence, because of course the other side of the fence is the condo next door, and just helps keeps everything on this side if you bring it in. If you own both sides of the fence, well, let her weave through, but be very careful with these tips. They are the most delicate part of the plant, and then when you break them off, they still grow, but it does stunt them a bit. My experience when I've made that mistake has taught me to not make that mistake. So of course these new canes are wanting to go and then grow and drop, and that's how they, shall we say, move about if given the opportunity to move about. So this is the tip that at the end of the season will start throwing off the shoots that want to root, and that'll be about October, November. So just keep these shoots happy and throw them in with the berries that are producing this year. Just let that cane as it comes up. As you can see, this one here, I'm trying to grab it here. I'm going to try and direct it up to the top here once it gets a little bigger, and that will be one of the main shoots for next year. Anyway, that's about it for now. We'll follow up when the berries are ripe. Another little maintenance thing is, if you look in tight there, you see a lot of orange crusty leaves. That's last year's growth. And basically just what you have to do is just let them rot a little bit, and then eventually you can just reach in and they come right off. So yeah, you want that little bit of maintenance throughout the year done, because of course if it gets wet, this is where you can get a little mold factor, and you never want to have anything like that happen to something that's doing so well. Anyway, one little tip about maintenance, and that's about it. And so here we are, around the 24th of June, I believe it is today. And as you can see, the crop is just starting to come in. We have our Marionberry, as you can see, forming, and a good abundance about to come. So let's have a look at the babies we planted this year. So here they are, and as you can see, they're kind of dwarf looking right now, and that's typical of year one. So in year one, don't expect to see too much from those babies. But in year two, we slide over here. Here's the second year plants. And if I was to follow this shoot, this new shoot coming out of the ground, I'll quickly show you the end of it here. It's all the way up here. And of course, these are the delicate tips I've talked about before, that you must be very cautious with the end of the new shoot, because if they break, well, that just slows down production. As you can see, we lost one here, but a little closer observation here, and you can see that it's starting to catch up with what it hasn't grown. So it'll throw two shoots now, one here and one here. So well, it'll recover, but it's not the greatest of situations. Anyway, I've brought out a bowl, and I am going to pick my first little ready crop of these little babies. So here we are, August, mid-August, and pretty much not a berry to be had on the canes anymore. So now it's time to remove them. And of course we have our new canes for next year that we do not want to accidentally cut. So we're going to focus on getting rid of all of this year's cane. And this can be done now. It can be done later. I like to do it now. I mean, I've seen some Marionberry ideas where you just let this rot and go brown, and it gets pretty thorny. Once the center of the cane dries, I mean, you get some really sharp needles in there, because once that dries out, it gets sharper. So with some gloves, there's still a little suppleness to them, so it's a good idea to do all your cleaning out of this year's crop, I find, in August. And the best way to do it is to get in where there was a berry cane and cut them out like that, because you want to spot these and cut those back and not accidentally cut your new growth. So I'll have to put the camera down. Got my gloves ready. Here I go. And of course, the thing I should point out, if you get a little view over the top with the luxury of a ladder, you can see the difference between the new growth and this past year's producers. So even in August, it's very distinct what's new and what needs to come out. So here we are, all cleaned out now, and as you can see, I have one cane here that you're familiar with the video now, and my layout, it's over the fence here. And this one's roughly about somewhere between 25 and 30 feet long already. And this is about the 25th of August. So as you can see, it's been protected and it hasn't broken like this one right here. But as you can see, just below, it's recovering and it's sending out another shoot. At least we got a good strong cane to here, and that's good. We lost it in the wind, but the tips are delicate, so one thing to remember about the tips of a Marionberry plant, you have to be careful. So here is everything now, all cleared out. As you can see, my setup, of course, is up quite high. And these are all the fresh canes. And there's really not too much to do once you get all the old stuff out. And let's just review here. Now these are the two, and they've thrown off a decent cane that I put in last year. And they'll produce a nice batch of berries. But even next year, they'll throw off a stronger cane like my mother plant here, this well-established root ball. And as you can see, I've got 5 canes came out of this root ball. And here are the 3 babies. Now I've got them tied up to the trellis format here to the top. And that's what you got to expect the first year. Not much. So here's 3 babies from basically the start of the video, those pots that you saw at the start of the video. There's 3 of them. So next year they'll probably throw off a cane similar to those 2 guys that were in a year ahead of them. And so the lesson here is, of course, when you are starting Marionberries, you've got to be patient for 3 to 4 years before you get big producing mama. Okay, not much more to add to the video until we get further into the fall, and that's when it'll start throwing off its shoots to make new plants, and we'll cover that again in a couple of months. So for now, there's not much to do but sit back and enjoy the rest of the summer and the start of fall. So here we are, mid-November, and we have the nursery set up, as you can see. Now, I don't have any film of me setting this up. As you look at this, it's not too complicated what I've done here. I just have a little, I would imagine that's about a 3-liter pot. They're about $2 at your local garden shop, and I just have the end there in the pot with a little tuft of grass. The tuft of grass helps over the winter balance out the pot muck content, shall we say. So it keeps it from turning into a real soupy mess, because the grass grows in there and it sucks up a lot of the water, which is a consideration here in Victoria, BC, because this is also known as the wet coast. Now, as you can see here, I've got this secure. I'm going to reach around and show you. So if the wind blows, you can see the vines up here will move, but down around the pots, everything's staying pretty stable. So just that little crosshairs of twigs that I've got stuck in there, and it keeps the tips from moving around. And so that's what you want. You don't want those tips moving around, but it's okay if the wind does a little bit of buffeting on the rest of the cane. So there's not too much more detail to that. I'm just going to move around and show you the other side of this. I should point out that there's a dozen little babies on this side and a few more on the other. So here's the setup on the other side, where you can see I've set up 8 more pots. And as I come in here, you get another look at what I was just describing on the other side. So you can, if you want, you could take these little runners and put 2 into one pot if you wanted to get a good root ball started, or 3. It's your choice. I just prefer to do the ones because I, of course, will divvy these up in the springtime. So this is pretty much coming to what we would call the final segment. So let's just review everything. Now, I know there'll probably be a lot of questions, and I'll try to do my best to answer a bunch of questions next year. But once again, this is my well-established root ball that I harvested from my previous location. And over here are the 2 that were bought, and they've had, well, they're coming up on just about 2 years in the ground. And so this one on the right is this last pot. So the other 19 pots are all stemming from this root ball with the 4 strong canes. There's 2 other canes in there. There's about 6 canes coming up, but 2 of them are not even close to being a good hardy mature cane. So as you can see, I've got the high set up. Your backyard, you may not have to do this. So this can definitely be set up much lower. And this is what I've achieved this year. So here's the expectation. Once you come home with a pot and put it in your backyard, don't expect too much the first year. But then the following year, expect a nice strong cane like you see here. That comes up and it's already worthy of throwing off a baby. So that's it. This has been Marionberries in your backyard 2016. We'll follow up in 2017 with questions that might be asked, and if there's something I missed and didn't do a good job of explaining, let me know. I'm Cameron. Bye for now.